April 23, 1945. Southern Germany, 11:20 hours. 7 men stand in a clearing bordered by pine trees. 6 wear field gray. 1 wears civilian clothes. His hands are bound behind his back with wire. He faces a stone wall approximately 4 meters away. The wall is part of a collapsed barn. Sections of the roof lie scattered in the grass. 3 soldiers stand 10 meters behind the civilian. They hold rifles at port arms. A captain stands to their left, his sidearm holstered. An interpreter stands beside the captain. A sergeant stands slightly apart near the tree line. He holds a folded paper in his left hand. The civilian does not move. His head is level. His eyes are open. The soldiers with rifles do not raise their weapons. No command has been given. The air is still. Birds can be heard in the trees. The civilian's shadow falls short and dark on the ground in front of him. No one speaks. The civilian was detained at Zohr 9:40 hours in a village 6 kilometers to the east. He was identified by 2 members of a local militia unit as having served in an administrative role with the regional party office. Documents recovered from a burning building included personnel lists with his name. The militia members stated he had been present during reprisal actions in the area during the previous autumn. The captain's unit, part of a Wehrmacht security detachment assigned to maintain order during the collapse of regional command structures, was ordered to investigate reports of unauthorized violence against retreating personnel. The civilian was brought to the captain shortly after noon. The interpreter, a corporal from Stuttgart, translated questions and responses for approximately 15 minutes. The civilian denied direct involvement in violence. He stated he had processed paperwork and maintained records. He provided names of senior officials who had since evacuated westward. The captain reviewed the documents. The militia members were not present during the questioning. The sergeant, who had served with the captain since 1943, stood nearby throughout. At 11:05 hours, the captain ordered the civilian moved to the clearing. The 3 riflemen were summoned from their post at the edge of the village. They marched the civilian along a dirt track through the trees. The sergeant followed. The interpreter walked beside the captain. No explanation was given to the riflemen. The clearing is roughly circular, 20 meters across. The collapsed barn occupies the western edge. The ground is uneven, with patches of mud and exposed roots. The sky is overcast. The temperature is cool. Field regulations governing the treatment of detained personnel specify procedures for investigation, documentation, and transfer to higher authority. Summary action is authorized only under specific conditions related to armed resistance, espionage, or sabotage. These conditions are defined in directives issued at Army and Corps level. In practice, enforcement of these regulations has become inconsistent as command structures fragment. Reports from other units operating in the region describe improvised responses to accusations of partisan activity or reprisal crimes. Some detainees are transferred. Others are released. Some are not. The 3 riflemen have been with the unit for varying lengths of time. The youngest joined in February. The eldest has served since 1942. None have participated in this type of action before, but all have heard accounts from other soldiers. The standard procedure, as understood informally, involves positioning the detained individual, forming a firing detail, and executing on command. The process is typically brief. The riflemen were not told why the civilian was being moved to the clearing, but the context is clear. The isolated location, the stone wall, the bound hands, the presence of the captain. Each element follows a recognizable pattern. The youngest rifleman checks the bolt on his weapon as they wait. The action is smooth. His hands are steady. The eldest shifts his weight slightly but does not adjust his grip. The third keeps his eyes on the captain, waiting for the signal to raise his rifle. The captain does not give the order. He stands motionless. His hand does not move toward his holster. His mouth remains closed. The riflemen do not raise their weapons. The civilian continues to face the wall. His shoulders do not move. His breathing is not audible from where the soldiers stand. The interpreter glances at the captain. The captain does not return the glance. The sergeant looks down at the paper in his hand, then back at the captain. No one speaks. The only sound is wind moving through the upper branches of the pines. 30 seconds pass. Then a minute. The riflemen remain at port arms. The civilian does not turn his head. The captain's jaw tightens briefly. His eyes remain fixed on the civilian's back. The youngest rifleman's finger rests alongside the trigger guard. He does not move it. The eldest rifleman blinks slowly but does not shift his stance. The third continues to watch the captain. The sergeant takes one step forward, then stops. Nothing happens. 2 minutes pass, then 3. The tension does not release. It simply extends. The riflemen continue to hold their weapons. The civilian continues to face the wall. The captain continues to stand in place. No explanation is offered. No gesture is made. The interpreter shifts his weight from one foot to the other. He does not speak. The sergeant folds the paper he is holding and places it in his jacket pocket. His hand remains on the pocket for several seconds, then drops to his side. He watches the captain. The youngest rifleman glances briefly at the soldier beside him. The other soldier does not react. Both return their attention forward. The civilian's shadow has not moved. The sun remains behind clouds. The temperature has not changed. 4 minutes. The wind shifts slightly, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine resin. A bird calls from deeper in the forest. Another answers. The sound is sharp and clear. The civilian's head lowers fractionally, then rises again. His posture does not otherwise change. The captain's hand moves to his belt, resting near his holster. His fingers do not touch the leather. They remain still. The interpreter takes a shallow breath and holds it. The exhalation is barely audible. The riflemen do not move. 5 minutes. The sergeant looks at the ground near his feet, then back at the captain. His expression is neutral. His hands hang at his sides. The captain does not look at him. At 11:28 hours, the sergeant speaks. His voice is low and level. He addresses the captain by rank. He states that transportation has been arranged to move detained personnel to the district holding facility, 20 kilometers northwest. He states that the transport will depart at 00:40 hours. He states that space is available. The captain does not respond immediately. He continues to look at the civilian for several seconds. Then he turns to face the sergeant. His expression does not change. He nods once. The sergeant gestures to the riflemen. He signals them to lower their weapons. The youngest hesitates for a fraction of a second, then complies. The others follow. The sergeant walks toward the civilian and cuts the wire binding his hands using a folding knife from his pocket. He tells the civilian to turn around. The civilian turns slowly. His wrists are marked where the wire pressed into the skin. He does not rub them. The captain speaks briefly to the interpreter. The interpreter tells the civilian he will be transferred to district authority for further processing. The civilian nods. He does not speak. The sergeant gestures toward the dirt track leading back to the village. The civilian begins walking. One of the riflemen follows at a distance of 3 meters. The others remain in the clearing. The captain removes a cigarette case from his jacket. He opens it, then closes it without taking a cigarette. He places it back in his pocket. The interpreter stands quietly nearby. The remaining riflemen sling their rifles and wait for direction. The captain tells them to return to their post. They leave the clearing without speaking. The sergeant waits until they are gone, then walks back toward the village. The captain follows. By 11:45 hours, the clearing is empty. The stone wall remains. The collapsed barn does not change. The tracks left by boots in the soft ground near the tree line are shallow and indistinct. The civilian's shadow, which had fallen short and dark on the ground, is no longer visible. The civilian is placed in a storage room in the village with 2 other detained individuals. A guard is posted outside the door. The civilian sits on the floor with his back against the wall. He does not speak to the others. His wrists show faint lines where the wire was removed. He does not touch them. The 3 riflemen return to their position at the edge of the village. They resume their watch over the approach road. The youngest cleans his rifle, though it has not been fired. The eldest sits on a stone wall and eats a portion of bread from his pack. The third stands and scans the road. None discuss what occurred in the clearing. The captain returns to the house, being used as a temporary command post. He reviews a map spread across a table. The interpreter is present but does not assist. The captain traces a rote with his finger, then marks a notation in pencil. He does not mention the clearing or the civilian. The sergeant checks the roster of detained personnel and notes the civilian's name. He records the intended transfer time. His handwriting is even and legible. He places the paper in a folder with other documents. The folder is placed on a shelf. At 14:10 hours, a truck departs the village carrying 7 detained individuals, including the civilian. The truck travels northwest. The captain does not observe its departure. No formal report was filed regarding the events in the clearing on April 23. Unit records for that date note the arrival and transfer of detained personnel, but do not include details of individual cases. The civilian's name appears on a transport list dated April 23, with a notation indicating transfer to district authority. No subsequent entry clarifies his fate. The captain's service file contains no reference to the incident. His duties during April 1945 are summarized in a single line: maintenance of order and security in assigned sector. No commendations or reprimands are recorded for this period. He remained with the unit until surrender in early May. The sergeant's personal effects, archived after his death in 1961, include a notebook with entries from the final months of the war. The entry for April 23 lists weather conditions. the movement of personnel, and supply shortages. It does not mention the clearing or the civilian. A single notation reads, "Transport arranged. The interpreter was reassigned to another unit on April 27. His service record includes no unusual entries for late April. He provided no written or oral account of the incident in later years. He was interviewed briefly in 1953 for a regional history project, but declined to discuss specific events from the war's final weeks." The 3 riflemen were separated after surrender. One was held in a prisoner camp until August 1945. Another returned to his home region in June. The third was transferred to a labor detail and released in October. None made statements about the events of April 23 in available records. The captain returned to civilian life in Bavaria in late 1947. He worked in municipal administration until his retirement in 1968. He attended one reunion of former unit members in 1956, but did not participate in subsequent gatherings. A letter written to a former colleague in 1959 mentions the difficulty of the war's final months, but provides no specific details. He died in 1972. No memoirs or personal accounts were found among his papers. The sergeant remained in his hometown after the war and worked as a tradesman. He married in 1948 and had 3 children. His family reported that he rarely spoke about his wartime service. In a conversation recorded by his son in 1960, he stated that the collapse of order in early 1945 had been chaotic, and that many decisions were made without clear guidance. He did not elaborate. He died in 1961. The interpreter moved to Frankfurt and worked as a translator for commercial firms. He was contacted in 1968 by a researcher compiling unit histories, but provided only basic information about his service. He stated that his role had been limited to language support, and that he had not been involved in command decisions. He declined further interviews. He died in 1984. The civilian's name appears on partial records recovered from district facilities after the war, but his ultimate disposition is unclear. No death certificate or release documentation has been located. The transport list from April 23 is the last confirmed record of his detention. The clearing remains accessible. The stone wall, part of the collapsed barn, has deteriorated further, but has not been removed. The trees surrounding the clearing are taller now. The dirt track leading from the village is overgrown and difficult to follow. No marker indicates what occurred there on April 23, 1945. The village archives contain no local records of the incident. Residents interviewed in the 1970s recalled the presence of military units during the final weeks of the war, but could not provide details about specific events. The militia members who identified the civilian are not named in surviving documents. Their subsequent activities and fates are unknown. The 3 riflemen carried their weapons back to the village that morning. The bolts were not cycled. No cartridges were expended. The youngest cleaned his rifle out of habit, though it remained unfired. The eldest resumed his watch. The third returned to his duties. None were asked to explain what had not occurred. The sergeant spoke once. The captain did not give the order. The civilian was placed on a truck and driven away. The clearing emptied. The birds continued to call from the trees. The shadows moved as the day progressed. The silence remained unbroken by gunfire. No record documents why the voice was raised. No testimony explains what prompted the interruption. The moment passed without ceremony. The war ended 12 days later.